The ammunition depot at Forward Operating Base Kandahar stretched like a concrete cathedral under the Afghan sun, its corrugated metal walls radiating heat waves that made the desert shimmer like a mirage. Inside, between towering stacks of olive-drab crates marked with stenciled warnings in 3 languages, Corporal Zara Nakamura moved with the mechanical precision of someone who had learned to disappear into routine. Her hands, small but calloused from years of handling ordnance, guided each 155 artillery shell crate into perfect alignment with the others. The work was mindless, repetitive, exactly what she needed. What nobody knew, not the sneering privates who called her Ammo Girl, not the staff sergeant who assigned her to inventory duty as punishment for some imagined slight, not even the base commander who barely acknowledged her existence, was that Zara carried secrets heavier than the ammunition she stacked daily. Secrets that would have changed everything. If anyone had bothered to look beyond the unremarkable logistics specialist with dirt under her fingernails and regulation-cut black hair tucked beneath a faded patrol cap. The medal had been her mistake. She'd forgotten it was there, wrapped in an old t-shirt and buried at the bottom of her footlocker beneath spare socks and letters from home she never answered. The silver star, with its distinctive 5-pointed design and red-white-blue ribbon, had been gathering dust for 3 years now, ever since she'd requested transfer to ground operations and sworn everyone to secrecy about her previous life, about the missions that had earned her commendations she couldn't wear, about the aircraft she could no longer fly. Staff Sergeant Martinez discovered it by accident during a random inspection, his meaty fingers closing around the metal case while Zara stood at attention, her face carefully blank as her world began to crumble. The moment stretched like taffy as Martinez read the citation, his expression shifting from boredom to confusion to something approaching awe. The words seemed to hang in the stifling air of the barracks. For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States, while serving as pilot in command of an AH-64D Apache attack helicopter during Operation Enduring Freedom. Nakamura, Martinez said slowly, his voice carrying none of its usual dismissive edge. We need to talk. Outside, the Afghan wind picked up, rattling the plywood walls and carrying with it the scent of diesel fuel and dust that had become the signature perfume of their deployment. Zara kept her eyes fixed on a point somewhere above Martinez's left shoulder, watching particles of sand dance in the shaft of sunlight streaming through the window. She had known this day would come eventually. In a place where secrets had a way of clawing their way to the surface like bones in a desert storm, she had known her past would catch up with her. The truth always did. Now, as Martinez turned the medal over in his hands like he was holding something sacred, Zara wondered if she was ready to explain why the best Apache pilot in her squadron had volunteered to stack ammunition in the desert heat, why someone with her record would choose to bury her wings beneath layers of bureaucracy and self-imposed exile. The answer was complicated, wrapped in guilt and grief, and a promise she'd made to herself on the worst day of her military career. But that was a story for another time, another conversation. For now, she waited, watching the dust motes swirl and knowing that everything was about to change. The base's loudspeakers crackled to life, interrupting the heavy silence. All personnel report to designated rally points immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to rally points. Incoming enemy contact imminent. Through the window, Zara could see soldiers scrambling across the compound, their movements quick but controlled. Somewhere in the distance, the distinctive whop-whop-whop of rotor blades cut through the desert air, growing louder with each passing second. Apache helicopters, she realized with a mixture of longing and dread. Her old unit, arriving for close air support just as the Taliban decided to test the base's defenses. Martinez was still staring at the medal when the first mortar round exploded somewhere beyond the perimeter wall, close enough to rattle the windows and send a fine shower of dust cascading from the ceiling. His eyes snapped to Zara's face, searching for something she wasn't sure she was ready to give. "How many combat hours?" he asked. 2,437, she replied without hesitation. The number was burned into her memory like a scar. Another explosion, closer this time. Through the window, she could see muzzle flashes winking like deadly stars along the ridgeline that overlooked their position. The Taliban had chosen their timing well, late afternoon, when the sun would be in the defenders' eyes and the heat would make accurate shooting nearly impossible. Martinez made a decision that would echo through the next 48 hours and beyond. "Corporal Nakamura," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command authority she hadn't heard directed at her in years, "you're coming with me to the command post. Now." As they ran across the compound, dodging between concrete barriers and vehicle checkpoints, Zara found herself cataloging the tactical situation with the instincts of someone who had spent years reading battlefields from 3,000 feet above the ground. The enemy's position was good but not perfect. They had elevation and concealment, but their fields of fire were limited by the terrain. The base's defensive positions were adequate for ground assault, but vulnerable to the kind of coordinated mortar attack that seemed to be developing. What they needed was air support. What they had was a logistics specialist who used to fly attack helicopters, running toward a command post where desperate officers were about to learn that sometimes the most unlikely people carry the most extraordinary capabilities hidden beneath the most ordinary exteriors. The metal bounced against Martinez's chest as he ran, its weight insignificant compared to the secrets it represented. Behind them, the ammunition depot stood silent and stolid, its concrete walls already seeming like artifacts from a simpler time when Zara's biggest worry was keeping her past buried beneath stacks of ordnance and routine paperwork. That time was over now. The command post buzzed with controlled chaos when Martinez and Zara arrived, their boots clattering against the plywood floor as they pushed through the entrance. Radio chatter filled the air in overlapping waves of urgent communication, punctuated by the steady beep of equipment monitoring systems and the occasional crackle of static that spoke of electromagnetic interference from enemy jamming attempts. Major Kellerman, the base commander, stood hunched over a topographical map spread across a folding table, his finger tracing enemy positions while his operations officer rattled off casualty reports and ammunition counts. "Sir," Martinez interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise with military precision, "I need to show you something." Kellerman barely looked up from the map, his attention focused on the red pins that marked confirmed enemy contacts along the ridge. "Not now, Sergeant. We've got company-sized element with heavy weapons, possibly coordinated with secondary attacks from the north and east. I need every available man on the perimeter." "Sir, this is about available personnel," Martinez insisted, producing the silver star from his pocket like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. The metal caught the harsh fluorescent lighting, its polished surface reflecting the chaos around them in fractured glimpses. The effect was immediate. Kellerman's head snapped up, his eyes widening as he read the citation Martinez held out for inspection. The radio chatter seemed to dim as other officers noticed the metal, their conversations trailing off into whispered speculation. Zara stood at attention, her face carefully neutral, but inside she felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with exposure, with having her carefully constructed anonymity stripped away layer by layer. "Apache pilot," Kellerman said, not quite a question. His voice carried the flat tone of someone processing information too quickly to fully absorb its implications. "Combat veteran, Silver Star recipient." His eyes found Zara's face for the first time, really looking at her instead of seeing through her the way officers looked at enlisted personnel they considered functionally invisible. "Yes, sir," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Through the command post's reinforced windows, she could see the distinctive silhouettes of AH-64D Apache helicopters circling the base like mechanical vultures, their pilots searching for targets while maintaining safe distance from the enemy's surface-to-air capabilities. Kellerman studied her for a long moment, his eyes moving from the medal in Martinez's hand to the woman standing before him. "Why didn't you tell us? Why are you stacking ammunition instead of flying combat missions?" The question hung in the air like smoke, heavy with implications Zara wasn't ready to discuss. The real answer was complicated, tangled up in guilt and loss, and a promise she'd made to herself after her last mission went sideways and good people died because of decisions she'd made in the cockpit of an aircraft she'd thought she understood completely. "Personal reasons, sir," she said instead, the military euphemism covering a multitude of sins and sorrows. Another mortar round exploded somewhere in the compound, close enough to rattle the windows and send a shower of dust cascading from the ceiling. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized as the backup generators kicked in. On the radio, voices began reporting casualties from the vehicle maintenance bay, their calm professionalism barely masking the urgency of the situation. "We need every pilot we can get," Kellerman said, his decision already made before he'd finished speaking. "The Taliban have us bracketed with mortars, and our air support is having trouble identifying targets without ground designation. You still current on Apache systems?" Zara nodded, though current was a relative term when applied to someone who hadn't touched the controls of a combat helicopter in 3 years. The muscle memory was still there, buried beneath layers of self-doubt and careful avoidance, but whether she could still translate that knowledge into effective combat operations remained to be seen. "Then you're back in the air," Kellerman announced, his words carrying the weight of command authority that could reshape reality with brutal efficiency. "Martinez, get her to the flight line. Full combat loadout priority 1. As they left the command post, Zara caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window glass, a small woman in dusty fatigues, her face set with the kind of determination that came from accepting the inevitable. Behind her, the command post continued its organized chaos, officers and enlisted personnel working together to coordinate the base's defense against an enemy that had chosen the wrong day to test their resolve. The flight line stretched before them like a runway to the past, its concrete surface shimmering with heat waves and jet fuel vapors. 2 Apache helicopters sat waiting, their crews performing final systems checks while ordnance teams loaded Hellfire missiles and 30 ammunition with practiced efficiency. The sight of them, angular, predatory, beautiful in their mechanical complexity, sent a familiar thrill through Zara's chest, followed immediately by the cold weight of remembered failure. She had loved these machines once, understood them in a way that went beyond technical specifications and operational parameters. Flying an Apache had been like wearing wings, like becoming something more than human in the service of protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. But love and understanding weren't always enough, and the desert was littered with the wreckage of good intentions and split-second decision that haunted the dreams of those who survived to remember them. Now, as she approached the nearest aircraft, Zara wondered if she still had what it took to be worthy of the machine's capabilities and the trust of the people counting on her to use them effectively. The crew chief, a grizzled sergeant named Kowalski, looked up from his pre-flight checklist with the skeptical expression of someone who had seen too many replacement pilots arrive with more enthusiasm than experience. "You the new pilot?" he asked, his voice carrying the flat tone of someone who had learned not to get attached to aircrew who might not survive their first mission. "Something like that," Zara replied, running her hands along the Apache's armored fuselage with the reverence of someone greeting an old friend. The aircraft was beautiful and terrible in equal measure, a testament to human ingenuity channeled toward the ancient art of warfare. Every line and angle had been designed with deadly purpose, from the chain gun mounted beneath its nose to the stub wings that carried enough firepower to level city blocks. "What's your call sign?" Kowalski asked, already knowing the answer would tell him everything he needed to know about the woman standing before his aircraft. Zara hesitated, the name catching in her throat like a physical thing. She hadn't used it in 3 years, hadn't allowed anyone to call her by the identifier that had once defined her identity as surely as her fingerprints or DNA. But standing there on the flight line, with enemy mortars bracketing the base and people counting on her to remember who she used to be, the old Coulson felt like putting on a uniform that still fit perfectly despite years in storage. "Phoenix," she said finally, the word emerging from her lips like a prayer or a confession. Kowalski's expression shifted, skepticism giving way to something approaching recognition. "Phoenix," he repeated, rolling the name around on his tongue like he was tasting wine. "I heard stories about a pilot named Phoenix. Afghanistan 3 years back. Some kind of legend the way people talk about it." "Stories get exaggerated," Zara said, but she was already climbing into the cockpit, her hands finding familiar switches and controls with the muscle memory of someone who had spent thousands of hours in similar seats. The Apache's interior embraced her like a second skin, all analog gauges and digital displays arranged in perfect ergonomic harmony. Above them, the sky stretched endless and blue, interrupted only by the occasional wisp of cloud and the dark shapes of aircraft maintaining combat air patrol over the base. It was a good sky for flying, Zara noted automatically, with excellent visibility and minimal weather concerns. The kind of sky that made aerial combat feel almost clean, reduced to simple equations of physics and geometry played out against the backdrop of infinity. But she knew better than most that nothing about combat was actually clean, and the sky that looked so peaceful from the ground could become a maze of tracer rounds and missile contrails faster than most people could comprehend. The Taliban fighters positioned along the ridge were equipped with modern surface-to-air missiles, weapons that could turn an Apache helicopter into a falling star with a single well-aimed shot. As Kowalski completed the external inspection and gave her the thumbs-up for engine start, Zara closed her eyes for just a moment and tried to remember what it felt like to believe in herself completely. The feeling was there, buried beneath years of doubt and self-recrimination, waiting to be excavated like an artifact from a more confident time. When she opened her eyes again, Phoenix was back. The Apache's twin General Electric T700 turboshaft engines spooled up with a rising whine that built to a thunderous roar, their combined output generating enough power to lift 30,000 pounds of aircraft, fuel, and ordnance into the hostile sky above forward operating base Kandahar. Zara ran through the startup checklist with mechanical precision, her fingers dancing across switches and buttons in sequences burned into her muscle memory through countless hours of training and combat operations. Each system came online in turn: hydraulics, electrical, flight controls, weapon systems, until the aircraft hummed with lethal potential. "Phoenix 17, this is Kandahar Tower," crackled the voice in her headset, cutting through the engine noise with crystal clarity. "You are cleared for immediate departure, Vector 270, altitude at your discretion. Enemy contacts bearing 345 through 015, range approximately 4,000 meters. Good hunting." "Phoenix 17, copy all," Zara replied, her voice steady as she lifted the collective and felt the familiar sensation of the earth falling away beneath her. The Apache rose from the flight line like a mechanical phoenix indeed, its rotor blades carving the air with purposeful violence as it translated raw power into controlled flight. From her position in the front seat, the world spread out below in stunning clarity. The base appeared as a collection of rectangular buildings and vehicle parks arranged around the central runway, its defensive perimeter marked by concrete barriers and guard towers that seemed pitifully inadequate from this elevated perspective. Beyond the wire, the Afghan landscape stretched endlessly in all directions: brown earth and scattered vegetation broken by the occasional wadi or rocky outcrop that could conceal 1,000 enemies. Her co-pilot and gunner, a young warrant officer named Davies who looked like he'd stepped straight out of flight school, was running through weapons systems checks with the focused intensity of someone who understood that their survival depended on every system functioning perfectly. The Apache's arsenal was impressive by any standard. 16 Hellfire missiles mounted on the stub wings, 76 rounds of 30 high-explosive ammunition for the chain gun, and enough countermeasures to confuse most modern surface-to-air missiles. "Targets acquired," Davies announced, his voice tight with concentration as he worked the target acquisition and designation system. On Zara's display, thermal images resolved into human shapes positioned among the rocks along the ridge, their body heat showing as white-hot silhouettes against the cooler background of stone and sand. "Count 15 to 20 personnel, possible heavy weapons emplacement at grid 473, 821. Zara studied the tactical display, her mind automatically calculating angles of attack and egress routes, while accounting for enemy capabilities and friendly positions. The Taliban had chosen their position well, elevated terrain with good fields of fire toward the base, natural cover from aerial attack, and multiple escape routes through the wadis that twisted through the landscape like ancient riverbeds. Taking them out would require precision and timing, the kind of coordinated assault that separated professional military aviators from amateur pilots with more courage than skill. "Phoenix 1-7, this is Overwatch," came a new voice over the radio, calm and authoritative in the way of forward air controllers who had learned to manage chaos through sheer force of will. "We have friendly forces in contact approximately 800 meters southeast of target area. Danger close restrictions are in effect. Request you maintain minimum safe distance until friendlies can be extracted." The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. Danger close operations required surgical precision, the ability to deliver devastating firepower within meters of friendly forces without causing fratricidal casualties. It was the kind of mission that separated elite pilots from merely competent ones, demanding perfect coordination between aircrew and ground controllers, while maintaining awareness of rapidly changing tactical situations. "Overwatch, Phoenix 1-7 copies danger close," Zara replied, her voice carrying none of the uncertainty she felt churning in her stomach. "Request specific grid coordinates for friendly positions and authorization for close air support." As she maneuvered the Apache into position for the attack run, banking the aircraft through a gentle turn that put the enemy positions at optimal angle for weapon employment, Zara felt the familiar sensation of time dilation that came with combat operations. Everything seemed to slow down and speed up simultaneously, creating a hyper-awareness of detail that made every gauge reading, every radio transmission, every flicker of movement on the ground stand out with crystalline clarity. Below them, the base continued to absorb mortar fire, explosions blooming like deadly flowers among the buildings and vehicle parks. She could see soldiers moving between defensive positions, their figures tiny and vulnerable against the vastness of the landscape. These were her people, she realized with sudden fierce protectiveness. Not just Americans, but warriors who had chosen to stand between civilization and chaos, who deserved better than to die in the desert because politicians and generals played games with inadequate resources and impossible rules of engagement. Davies had locked onto the primary target, his crosshairs centered on what appeared to be a mortar position concealed among the rocks. "Target locked, ready for engagement," he announced, his voice steady despite the obvious stress of his first real combat mission. "Wait for my command," Zara said, still maneuvering the Apache to optimize their attack angle while maintaining safe distance from the reported friendly positions. Through her helmet-mounted display, she could see the thermal signatures of the Taliban fighters, some moving between positions while others remained stationary in what appeared to be prepared firing positions. The radio crackled with updates from ground forces, reports of casualties and ammunition expenditure mixed with requests for immediate air support. The battle was reaching a crescendo, she realized, that moment in combat when events either resolved quickly or spiraled into catastrophic escalation. Everything depended on precise execution of tactical plans that had been developed in seconds and would be judged by history for decades. Phoenix 1-7, you are cleared hot, came Overwatch's voice, cutting through her thoughts with brutal clarity. Repeat, you are cleared hot. Friendly positions marked by infrared strobes, danger close restrictions remain in effect. This was it, Zara thought as she lined up the shot that would announce Phoenix's return to combat operations. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of stacking ammunition, and pretending to be someone she wasn't, all culminating in this moment when muscle memory and trained instinct would either prove adequate to the task or fail spectacularly in front of people who were counting on her to be more than she believed herself capable of being. Time to find out who she really was. The first Hellfire missile left its rail with a soft whoosh of ignited propellant, its solid rocket motor accelerating the 99-pound warhead to supersonic velocity as sophisticated guidance systems locked onto the laser designation provided by Davies' targeting system. Zara watched its flight path on her display, tracking the missile's progress as it arced through the afternoon sky toward the enemy position with mechanical precision that bordered on the supernatural. The explosion, when it came, was everything she remembered and nothing she had prepared for. The Hellfire's shape-charged warhead detonated with devastating effect against the rocky outcrop, sending shards of stone and metal fragments cascading down the slope in a deadly avalanche that erased the Taliban mortar position as completely as if it had never existed. Secondary explosions followed as stored ammunition cooked off, adding their voices to the symphony of destruction that echoed across the desert landscape. Direct hit, Davies announced, his voice carrying a mixture of professional satisfaction and barely suppressed excitement. Target destroyed, no movement detected in impact area. But Zara was already looking for the next threat, her eyes scanning the thermal display for signs of enemy activity that might indicate additional weapons positions or retreat routes. The Taliban were adaptive fighters who had learned to survive against technologically superior opponents by maintaining mobility and avoiding prolonged engagements with American air power. They would be moving now, seeking new positions or escape routes that would allow them to continue the fight from safer locations. Phoenix 1-7, this is Groundhog 6, came a new voice over the radio, gravelly and tired in the way of infantry commanders who had been in contact for too long. We have visual on approximately 10 enemy personnel moving north through Wadi Alpha 7. Request immediate engagement if possible. Zara swung the Apache in a sweeping turn that brought the reported location into view, her aircraft's sensors sweeping the terrain below for signs of movement. There, thermal signatures moving in single file through a narrow ravine that provided concealment from ground observation, but left them exposed to aerial attack. The Taliban fighters were professional enough to maintain tactical spacing, but not experienced enough to understand how their body heat betrayed their position to advanced thermal imaging systems. Target acquired, she announced, settling the Apache into a hover that provided optimal firing angle while maintaining sufficient altitude to avoid small arms fire. Below them, the enemy fighters continued their movement through the wadi, apparently unaware that death was tracking them from 3,000 feet above their heads. The chain gun spoke with a sound like tearing canvas, its electrically driven mechanism cycling at a rate of 625 rounds per minute. Each 30 high-explosive shell left the barrel with a muzzle velocity of 2,600 feet per second, following ballistic trajectories calculated by computer systems that accounted for aircraft movement, target motion, wind speed, and a dozen other variables that could affect accuracy at extended range. The effect was immediate and devastating. High-explosive rounds bracketed the wadi in precise patterns that left no room for escape, each detonation sending shrapnel fragments ricocheting off the ravine walls in deadly crossfire patterns. The thermal signatures on Zara's display winked out one by one as enemy fighters were caught in the open by firepower they had no defense against, their retreat turning into a route that ended in permanent silence. "Groundhog 6, Phoenix 1-7, she reported, her voice carrying the flat professionalism that masked the complex emotions of successful combat engagement. 10 enemy KIA, Wadi is clear for friendly movement. Phoenix 1-7, Groundhog 6 copies. Outstanding work. That was some of the best close air support I've seen in 20 years of combat operations." The praise should have felt good, Zara thought as she continued her patrol over the battlefield. But instead, it only served to remind her of how much she had lost during her 3 years of self-imposed exile. This was what she had been born to do, what she had trained for through years of intensive instruction and practical experience. Flying combat missions wasn't just her job, it was her identity, her contribution to something larger than herself, her way of making meaning from the chaos and violence that defined military operations in hostile territory. But it was also the thing that had nearly destroyed her, the source of guilt and grief that had driven her to bury her wings beneath stacks of ammunition and administrative paperwork. Success in combat operations meant accepting responsibility for life-and-death decisions that could haunt a person forever, especially when those decisions went wrong and good people died because of errors in judgment or failures of execution that seemed perfectly reasonable at the time, but proved catastrophically inadequate in retrospect. "Phoenix 1-7, this is Kandahar Base," crackled the radio, interrupting her brooding with news that would reshape the tactical situation once again. "Be advised, we have reports of additional enemy forces moving toward your position from the northeast. Count approximately 30 personnel with possible vehicle support. Request you investigate and report." 30 enemies with vehicle support changed everything. What had begun as a harassment attack by a small Taliban unit was evolving into something more serious, possibly a coordinated assault designed to test the base's defenses or create conditions for a larger offensive operation. Vehicle support suggested heavy weapons, possibly including anti-aircraft missiles that could pose a significant threat to her Apache. Zara turned the aircraft northeast, following the vector provided by ground controllers while scanning the horizon for signs of enemy movement. The Afghan landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, its brown monotony broken only by the occasional road or settlement that seemed to emerge from the earth itself. Finding 30 fighters in this vastness would be like locating needles in a haystack, assuming they didn't want to be found by American air power. Davies worked his sensors with the focused intensity of a hunter, sweeping thermal and electro-optical systems across potential approach routes while monitoring radio frequencies for enemy communications. "Contact," he announced suddenly, his voice tight with excitement. "Multiple vehicles, bearing 047, range 6,000 meters. Appears to be a convoy moving at high speed toward the base." On Zara's display, the convoy resolved into a line of pickup trucks and technical vehicles, their thermal signatures clearly visible against the cooler background of desert sand. She counted 5 vehicles total, each apparently loaded with personnel and equipment that could include anything from rifles to rocket-propelled grenades to sophisticated surface-to-air missiles. This was the moment when combat operations shifted from tactical engagement to strategic decision-making, when individual aircrew had to balance immediate threats against long-term consequences, while operating under rules of engagement that seemed designed more for political convenience than battlefield effectiveness. The convoy was clearly hostile. No legitimate traffic moved at high speed toward active combat zones, but engaging them would require authorization from higher command levels that might not understand the tactical urgency of the situation. "Kandahar Base, Phoenix 1-7, she transmitted, her voice carrying the controlled urgency that indicated significant threat development. "I have visual on 5-vehicle convoy bearing 047 from base, range 6,000 and closing. Request immediate clearance to engage." The response came back with gratifying speed. Phoenix 1-7, you are cleared to engage hostile convoy. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Repeat, weapons-free. Finally, Zara thought as she maneuvered the Apache into attack position. Clear authority to do what needed to be done without bureaucratic interference or political second-guessing. The convoy was moving fast but predictably, following what appeared to be a well-used smuggling route that would bring them within mortar range of the base within 15 minutes. She had that long to neutralize 5 vehicles and their crews before they could add their firepower to the Taliban attack that was already in progress. Time to remind everyone why Phoenix had once been considered one of the best combat pilots in theater. The convoy spread out as her Apache approached, individual vehicles peeling off from the main group to present multiple targets and complicate her attack run. It was a professional response that suggested experienced fighters rather than amateur volunteers, the kind of tactical adaptation that had made the Taliban such effective opponents despite their technological disadvantages. They understood that bunching up against air power was suicide, but spreading out created opportunities for some vehicles to escape, while others absorbed the inevitable destruction. Zara selected the lead vehicle first, reasoning that eliminating the command element would disrupt coordination and potentially cause the others to abort their mission. The Hellfire locked onto its target with electronic certainty, guidance systems calculating intercept course while accounting for vehicle movement, and terrain masking that might interfere with terminal guidance. The missile struck the pickup truck squarely in the center of its cargo bed, its shape-charged warhead penetrating the vehicle's unarmored structure before detonating with enough force to lift the entire chassis off the ground. The explosion was followed by secondary detonations as ammunition and ordnance stored in the truck bed added their contribution to the destruction, creating a fireball that could be seen for miles across the desert landscape. "One down," Davies reported, already shifting targets to the next vehicle in the convoy. 4 remaining, dispersing into broken terrain. The remaining Taliban vehicles had reached an area of rocky outcrops and shallow wadis that provided some concealment from aerial observation, forcing Zara to maneuver the Apache into positions that exposed them to potential ground fire, while allowing their sensors to maintain target locks. It was a calculated risk, trading safety for tactical effectiveness in a way that separated experienced combat pilots from cautious aviators who survived by avoiding danger rather than managing it professionally. Her second Hellfire found its target despite the driver's attempt to use terrain masking for protection, the missile's trajectory carrying it over a rocky ridge before diving down to strike the fleeing vehicle from above. The explosion sent debris cascading into a nearby wadi, the sound echoing off stone walls like thunder in a canyon. 2 down, 3 remaining, and the survivors were demonstrating increasing desperation in their attempts to reach positions where they could deploy their weapons against the base. "Phoenix 1-7, this is Groundhog 6, came the infantry commander's voice over the radio, steady and professional despite the obvious stress of coordinating multiple engagements simultaneously. "We have personnel in contact with enemy forces approximately 2 kilometers north of your current position. Be advised, friendly forces are marked with infrared strobes. Exercise extreme caution with ordnance delivery." Multiple engagements across a wide area suggested this was indeed a coordinated attack rather than a random harassment operation. Zara realized as she processed the tactical information while continuing her pursuit of the remaining convoy vehicles. The Taliban had planned this assault carefully, timing their movements to stretch defensive resources and create opportunities for penetration of the base's security perimeter. But they had made one critical error in their planning. They had underestimated the capabilities of a pilot who had spent years perfecting the art of close air support in exactly this kind of complex tactical environment. Phoenix had earned her reputation through precisely this type of mission: multiple threats, danger-close restrictions, friendly forces in contact, and time-sensitive targeting requirements that demanded split-second decision-making backed by years of training and combat experience. The third vehicle exploded as her chain gun found its mark, 30 rounds stitching a line of destruction across its roof and engine compartment with mechanical precision. The truck careened off the narrow trail it had been following, rolling down a rocky slope before coming to rest against a boulder in a tangle of twisted metal and burning fuel. 3 down, 2 remaining, and the survivors were showing signs of panic in their increasingly erratic driving patterns. Phoenix 1-7, be advised we have possible surface-to-air missile activity in your area, announced a new voice on the radio, the calm tone of an intelligence analyst delivering information that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Recommend you maintain minimum altitude until threat can be assessed. Surface-to-air missiles changed the tactical calculus completely, transforming what had been a one-sided engagement into something approaching fair fight between technologically advanced aircraft and man-portable weapons systems that could destroy multi-million-dollar helicopters with single shots. The Taliban had learned that engaging American air power required patience and proper equipment, and they had apparently decided this mission was important enough to risk their limited supply of sophisticated weapons. Zara immediately began evasive maneuvers, dropping the Apache to nap of the Earth altitude where terrain masking would make missile engagement more difficult, while simultaneously complicating her own ability to engage the remaining vehicles. Flying at high speed just above the ground required constant attention to obstacles and terrain features, but it also provided the kind of protection that had allowed helicopter crews to survive in contested airspace since the early days of rotary-wing aviation. The fourth vehicle made its final mistake when its driver attempted to cross an open area that provided no concealment from aerial observation. Zara's Hellfire struck it in mid-turn, the explosion lifting the truck completely off the ground, before depositing its burning remains in a shallow depression that had probably been carved by flash floods decades earlier. 4 down, 1 remaining, and that final vehicle was now heading directly toward the base at maximum speed, apparently intent on reaching firing position regardless of the obvious danger from continued air attack. Last vehicle approaching base perimeter, she reported to ground control, her voice carrying the controlled tension of someone managing multiple tactical considerations simultaneously. Estimate 2 minutes to weapons range. Request immediate clearance for final engagement. Phoenix 1-7, you are cleared hot. Repeat, cleared hot. Friendly forces have been notified to take cover. The final Taliban vehicle had reached the outer edge of the base's defensive perimeter, its occupants apparently preparing to deploy whatever weapons they carried in a last desperate attempt to inflict casualties on the American position. Through her thermal imaging system, Zara could see figures dismounting from the truck, carrying what appeared to be a mortar tube and several rounds of ammunition. This was where precision mattered most, she realized as she lined up for the final engagement of what had been the most intense combat mission of her return to flight status. Too close to friendly positions for Hellfire employment, too far for effective chain gun engagement at current angle, and complicated by the need to neutralize the threat without causing damage to base infrastructure or personnel who might be taking cover nearby. The solution required the kind of tactical creativity that separated elite pilots from merely competent aviators, the ability to see options that existed outside standard procedures and doctrine. Instead of attacking the vehicle directly, Zara targeted the ground immediately adjacent to it, using the explosive force of her 30 rounds to create a zone of destruction that would neutralize the threat without risking collateral damage to friendly positions. The engagement was over in seconds, high explosive rounds detonating in a precise pattern that left no room for survival while avoiding damage to anything beyond the immediate target area. The mortar tube tumbled across the sand, its crew scattered by explosive force that had appeared as suddenly and violently as a desert thunderstorm. All targets neutralized, Z.